Joining me is Elizabeth Rositsan. And don't forget, please remember to download the BarnBurner and Zingo TV apps in their respective app store on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, it's great to be here once again.
Long time no see.
Yeah, for sure. It's not like we did a show today or anything.
I guess turnabout is fair play.
Yeah.
Well, as a young person, you're watching what's going on in the world today, and you're seeing now a lot of athletes. You may or may not be aware because of the history of sport. For many years, many people like Crosby, Michael Jordan, a lot of athletes have not spoken up about what's going on in the United States. It has changed very quickly, even in your eyes.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely been a huge change, and especially now with everything going on, I feel like sports organizations are going through a lot of changes.
And those changes have to do with the opinions of people and people being able to think freely and make comments that maybe would have been fatal, because being an athlete is a business, and your business is making sure that you don't have bad things happen, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so many athletes who especially went out and spoke out against this matter. There's a lot of athletes. I feel like it's easier for athletes to speak out once they're, older and get the experience and they're more accomplished and they kind of have a voice. Then they can go ahead and it's still hard, but they have a bigger voice to speak out, about all these issues and about change and what athletes can fix and what people can fix. But when you're a young athlete just starting out, or maybe you're trying to make it into, the big leagues, it's really hard to kind of express your feelings and express your opinions, even if you know that something is wrong and you're not feeling comfortable because you're scared to lose an opportunity, or you're scared that something may happen to you if you speak the truth and express basically how you're feeling.
Yeah, I apologize. My other headphones weren't working, so I switched to the other ones. Yes, how you feel and how athletes feel is very important. But we're moving into a world where, we know everything that's going on in every corner of the world instantaneously. And it makes it more difficult to claim ignorance. And athletes, not that they're ignorant or not that they want to be ignorant, especially at this time. I think if the season was going on, I believe it'd be a lot easier for them to ignore or pretend they don't know what's going on. Now, everybody's not doing what they normally do, so it's very difficult for people to suggest, oh, gee, I didn't know that was happening.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. I mean, especially with social media and with all the technology and all the resources we have, it's impossible to kind of be blinded to something because people always see something, whether it's, I feel like social media right now is the biggest resource. You constantly see something, and it can be a good place or a really evil place. But the point is that people don't anymore have the right to say that certain issues aren't happening because they see them happening through news, through social media. They see all these things happening in the world, while before maybe people didn't have as many resources and they could justify their actions and their silence. But right now there's really no room for justification, and that goes the same for athletes. I feel like professional athletes often get excused for behaving a certain way, or sometimes on the, in contrast, get backlashed even more for saying certain things because all the attention is on them. But the point is, no one can be arrogant about it anymore because, your eyes are open to everything. There's news, there's social media, there's people talking. It's not like the old times when you didn't have access to anything.
Yeah, and I think also when it is also in what way you become aware of something in the context that you're made aware. We had the incident of a guy just jogging, being hunted down and killed. We don't know about it for 2 months. Then you have a man lying on the ground telling the police officer he can't breathe, and then he calls out for his mother. I think those two things together and the way Mr. Floyd died, we can all relate to. Personally, for me to call my mother, I am scared. Like, I can't imagine how frightened he was to ask for his mother. This is a grown man. Imagine the fear what comes to your mind. Can you imagine calling out your mother's name? Those are the most fearful moments that you have when you think about your mom, isn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know. Well, first of all, I don't know what kind of heartless person would still, keep pushing after they hear those words. I mean, the world's worst criminal, I don't think would deserve that, what happened. And I think it was, first of all, really heartless. And you're right. I mean, for a grown man to call out his mother's name, he has to be at the edge of everything, and it's just terrible. It's terrible and it's scary. And as you said, that's not, that incident got caught on tape. But there's so many other incidents that happen that people just, don't know about, that don't get caught on tape. As you said, the jogger, and it's really, obviously there's racism, but these kind of things happen to everyone, and not just by police. Of course, police brutality is a thing, and police racism is a thing, and it's terrible. But a lot of different things happen in the world. Like, people get murdered, killed by other people. It's such a dangerous place, and I feel like, speaking of athletes, they, especially big athletes who have, the voice to state their opinion and people will listen to them, I think they should do that, and they should, try and minimize these incidents with their power of their voice.
There is a human side to athletes, and I believe what we've seen is a perfect storm where the human aspect of an athlete, where they, I like it. I'm sorry I don't remember the NBA player's name, and I apologize for that. But the first NBA player who had COVID, before he had COVID, they were asking him about COVID. This is the week before or days before the NBA shut down. And he started touching everything of everybody else's, all the microphones, all the telephones. He started touching all of them. And then soon after that, it ended. The NBA ended and all the rest of the sports started to follow suit. I think that was, for me, that was a tipping point where the athletes realized, maybe I should be in touch with reality a little better. And for his credit, he apologized immediately after, not soon rather than very late after. He apologized and said, what I did was wrong, and I wish I had not have done it. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said. Elizabeth, sometimes we have to make mistakes to understand what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think he meant any harm with that by doing that. I think he was just caught up in the moment. Maybe, not saying it was right of him to do that. I think it was very wrong, but I also don't think, like, even a month ago or a few months ago, people saw the severity of the situation and people didn't think it would come to this extent. So people kind of, including athletes, they kind of looked lightheartedly to this. And speaking of, regretting actions, something that I also mentioned on the Skateblade show earlier, a figure skater, if I'm not mistaken, it was Johnny Weir who posted on Twitter. He said, "I shouldn't be sleeping with a gun beside my pillow," or something in the means of that. And he got a lot of backlash, but he didn't, because people thought he meant he's against the protesters in honor of George Floyd. But what he actually meant is he was, scared of the world. He was scared that what happened to George Floyd would happen to him. So he apologized for that as well, even though he didn't mean any harm for it. So that kind of ties in with the topic that you mentioned of, athletes saying something and then it backlashing on them.
Yeah, no, well, you know what? Athletes are human. They have as much right as anybody else to make a mistake. The only problem is that we put them on this giant pedestal, and then what happens is we're going, he's looking like he's pretty high up there. It'd be fun to knock him down. That's the unfortunate truth of being an athlete. It's very, like, listen, I'm not defending athletes. I'm not defending men and women who make hundreds of millions of dollars a year. But what I am saying is there is a human aspect, and sometimes we have to remember that there's a human experience that we're talking about. Yes, there is a difference. Having lots of money is a lot better. Like, the one thing I didn't like was I heard somebody say, I forget who it was, they said, when you have more money, you have more problems. I don't think so. I don't think so. When you have more money, you have petty problems, lots of petty problems, because somebody who's unemployed and trying to figure out how they're going to put a roof over their head or feed their family, they have problems. Those are problems. Not more money, more problems. Not true. Just when you have more money, the problems, I think, are childish problems. It's just the ways. Well, look at athletes. I believe that athletes, maybe not today, and maybe they'll learn. How do you feel about athletes who want more money, not because they need more money, but because the other person that is on the same playing field as they are making this amount of money, but I think I'm better than him. I should make more money.
Yeah, exactly. That just frustrates me. And as you said, I don't think more money is more problems. I can completely agree with you. Some people say money doesn't bring happiness, but in a sense, I mean, if you have a lot of money, you don't have to worry about debt or rent or anything. So, I mean, kind of, but
Elizabeth, if somebody gave us $1 million each, we'd figure out a way to be happy.
oh yes.
Right? That's the belief. But the truth is though, to take the counterpoint, it's not easy having people looking over your shoulder 24 hours a day. It's not easy having people question, like you were saying, everything we do, we say, we think. It's not easy, but it's still a far better life having the kind of roof you can have over your head, the kind of vehicle you can drive, the kind of house you can live in, the places you can go, the freedom that you have that money can give you. If you don't have money, there's a lot of things you cannot do, cannot have, and definitely not enjoy. So, but they do have problems. I just don't think their problems are bigger by any stretch. You were talking about being very, very interested in Skateblade and talking about athletes. Well, how do you see figure skaters sitting right now? I haven't given any thought to figure skaters, so help me out. Where are figure skaters in the pandemic?
So basically they haven't really announced anything in figure skating world yet. There hasn't been a lot of news regarding competitions, but I know they might do the same thing as they're doing in gymnastics, which is cancel the junior competitions. They were gonna do a competition in June, but that got postponed because they're not ready yet. The world isn't ready yet. So there hasn't been a lot of, kind of news in the figure skating world regarding that. But Also, I really hope that the postponement of the figure skating world championship won't mean that it will be hosted in another country, because it was supposed to be hosted in April, like in April or May, something like that, here in Montreal in Canada. So that would have been a huge revenue generator for figure skating in Canada. That would be a huge publicity generator. I mean, a lot of people already bought tickets to go, and everyone was extremely excited, and this would be not only exposure but also a lot of revenue for figure skaters. And now if they decide to postpone the figure skating world championships into a different country, that would be a tragedy for Skate Canada and skaters all over Canada, because they just won't get the same revenue. Obviously, when a world championships is in your home country, you get a much better revenue out of it. Athletes, coaches, judges, everyone. So that would be a huge blow for Canada. So that's something I'm really, really worried about, if they change the location, because I know a lot of other sports did that. They postponed, world championships and then changed their location based, on the safety of the countries. And the issue with Canada is that even an issue that I kind of ran in with hockey too. I mean, obviously the NHL are looking for hub cities to host playoffs when they do come back. And Edmonton was a big contender, but the problem with Canada right now is when you come into Canada, you have to quarantine for 14 days before you can do anything. So that would be a huge inconvenience for athletes. And obviously, I don't know how it's going to be in a month or 2 months or 3 months, but as of right now, it's really hard to plan anything in Canada.
Well, with the Canadian foot, every time we talk, I always have to bring up the Canadian Football League, regardless of the topic that we're talking about. And the Canadian Football League this year are canceled. They canceled the Grey Cup this year. So what they've done is they're maintaining the Hamilton hosting the Grey Cup next year, and they've moved Saskatchewan to the year after Hamilton because that hasn't been appointed yet. As far as the world of skating, do they know 2 years from now where they're going to be, or can they do just that? Well, because the planning for the next place, next season, next year, they can have that, and then 2 years from now come back to Canada and give them a chance. Would that work in the skating world?
That would be better than nothing. That would for sure, if the Canadian World Championships, World Championships in Canada, would be postponed to 2 years or sometime later, as you said, that would be not ideal, but that would be good. Either way, better than nothing, because Skate Canada needs exposure now, especially with all the budget cuts and all the revenue loss with the whole COVID situation. Skaters really need, small organizations like figure skating really need exposure, really need revenue, and having a world championships in Canada would really, really help them with that. That's how a lot of sports, other than the four major ones, make their money. They host world championships. They make money from competing at world or European or other world championships. And now that they can't, it's terrible. They don't have money. And so it's crucial for them to have the championships in Canada. It would be the best if they could still keep it, this year or next year in Canada, but in 2 years it would work, as you said. That would be much better than nothing, but it's not an ideal situation for Skate Canada.
Usually it takes time to plan an event like that, and it doesn't work. I don't see it working where they would have Canada host next year, because I believe the next place is already figured out all the, making it all work and stuff. The dynamics are such that they need time to organize and get it together. So that would be a good thing. The NBA apparently has handed a proposal to the players. The players are aware now from the NBA that there's a restart in the works. What do you think? What do you think?
I am extremely excited. I don't know how they're going to do it yet. I know there have been plans to put all of the teams in the playoffs. I think that's a terrible idea. I'm absolutely against that because that just defeats the purpose of the regular season. And athletes worked hard. I mean, the majority of the regular season still took place. So putting all the teams in the playoffs would just completely defeat that purpose. And I mean, this is professional sports we're talking about. I don't want to see participation medals handed out to teams just like that. I think the teams that earned their spot in the playoffs before the season and got cut should be the ones to compete. But as for the season coming back, I'm extremely excited. Even if they do decide to put all teams in the playoffs, I will just be happy to see the NBA back. I just really, I was really looking to this year's playoffs because, there was a lot of teams that surprised me, and especially the Raptors when people were saying that they're not not even might not make the playoffs, and they absolutely killed it. I was extremely excited as a huge Raptors supporter, but my only concern is that, I don't want any league, not just the NBA, I don't want any league to rush anything and jeopardize the safety and the well-being of players and coaches and maybe fans if they're going to allow fans. I don't know.
Yeah, the NBA was talking about, basically playing in Orlando, and the facilities are there, Disneyland, the hotels, all that kind of stuff is available to them, so it might work. So then how do you feel about the National Hockey League expanding the teams that make the playoffs? There's more teams in the playoffs than there normally is. Considering the circumstance, do you feel the same about that? Not all the teams, but more than would have been if the season had played out the way it was supposed to.
Well, honestly, I think it's a little bit different with the NHL because they pick 24 teams, not all teams, just 24. And why they pick 24 is because technically any one of those 24 could have still had a minor chance, but they still could have made it to the playoffs. So I think that is fair from the point of view that if they didn't put all 24 teams, then they would have taken the opportunity from teams who could have made it to the playoffs to not compete at all. So I think it's a little bit different with the NHL, but they did exclude the teams who had no chance of making it, which I think is great. But the NBA is planning to just include everyone. I mean, that's terrible. So I think it is better with the NHL. And I read some comments of players. I know Sidney Crosby said it's not ideal for him, but it's the best situation, the best outcome that could be in this current situation. And I completely agree with that. I don't see any other fair way that they could have done it. So I think that the NHL is kind of on the right track with selecting the 24 teams, in my opinion.
There should be some sort of reward for playing well during the season that is reflected on whether you are seeded in the playoffs or not. That should be something that the season needs to be worth something. And you're right. It was the playoff format included extra teams because those teams, it is felt, had an opportunity. They weren't out of the running for the playoffs, so they're going to give them a chance. It's just another thing that they're deciding, and we only have a few seconds left. Major League Baseball players rejected the 114 game schedule that Major League Baseball, the owners, put together. A few seconds, your comment, rejecting 114 games.
Honestly, I think it's wrong of them to do that because I think 114 games is, better than nothing. I think it's pretty good. I think they should have taken it, and with all the time we have left, I just don't think they should have rejected. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely. Elizabeth, as always, it's a pleasure to be on here with you. For Elizabeth Rosenstein, I want to remind you all that this show can be heard on the BarnBurner Radio Network. It's 122 platforms. Please check out the barnburner.ca for all the news. BarnBurner, watch it, hear it, read it, and download it. For Elizabeth Rosett Stan, I'm Frank Stanishi. Thank you for watching. Until tomorrow, that's today's edition of Sports Wrap. You guys,